Okay,
All
you
right,
guys,
so for our first set of notes,
what we're going to be doing is we're going to be folding our paper. I'm going to draw the piece of paper. And we're going to fold it into two main sections. The left-hand side is going to be the small piece, the right-hand side, the bigger piece. So go ahead and do that. Go ahead and fold your paper so that the left-hand side is smaller, the right-hand side is bigger. And we're basically going to have a few sections for this first piece, okay? And so we will talk about that in a minute as soon as you're done folding. We're going to have the essential question, we're going to have some vocabulary, and then we're going to have a section where you can put some examples. So I'm going to go ahead and finish drawing this, I'm sorry, so that it looks like your piece of paper. Okay, so this is what it looks like in whole. Obviously yours is going to look better because mine's crooked. But let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to have the essential question, vocabulary, and then we will have some examples. The vocabulary is really, 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 really important this time. Okay, so I'm just going to, you can either fold your paper or you can just draw some sections. It's totally up to you. So this is where my essential question is going to go, is in this section. Okay, I'm going to leave a good part of it for vocabulary, and you'll see why. And again, you can fold it or you can draw lines. Even if you want to draw really light lines just in case you have to move them, which I completely understand. All right, so in order to set this up, the first thing you're going to do is at the top of your paper, you're going to put learning target number 1. So go ahead and write that. Learning target number 1. And our learning target number 1 asks us to write equations, so expressions, I'm sorry, writing expressions. So you're going to go ahead and put that at the top of your paper, writing expressions. So that is your title. Do not forget, do not lose these notes. You are going to need them for the next few weeks, okay? Because learning target 1 and 2 are going to be on the same sheet, one on the front, one on the back, okay? So the first thing we're going to write here is our essential question. Essential question. That looks horrible. Okay, so we're going to put essential question here. That's the first thing. That is our goal. What is our goal? Okay. And the second thing you're going to put in the second section is vocab or vocabulary. Okay, vocab. So far we have essential question, we have vocabulary, and the last piece is writing expressions. Okay. Writing, oops, I'm gonna have to do that a little bit smaller so we can fit it. So I'm just going to put writing expressions like that. Okay, just to shorten it a little bit since we don't have a lot of room. So far you should have your learning target, number 1, writing expressions. That's our goal. Okay, we're gonna have some vocab, and then we're gonna have some writing expressions we're actually going to practice. Okay, I'll show you how to do that. So this next section, that middle section, I'm going to break it up into 4 pieces, and I'm going to put adding, subtracting, multiplying, which is a dot, and dividing. Now that you are in upper level, you don't really use that X anymore for multiplying. Now it's a dot or an asterisk, and I'll show you some of those things. But we're going to be using that when we work on these words and on these expressions, okay? So now you have a basic setup, and I told you on your assignment that you were going to have 2 numbers written down on the bottom, so I will tell you what those are in just a minute. And it really is specifically just for our escape room. They really don't mean anything. But before we do that, let's go ahead and write our essential question. what is it that we are trying to answer? Well, that's pretty simple. How, okay, go ahead and write how do I create an expression, okay? In fact, let's not put create. Let's say, how do I write? So we can stick with our learning target. How do I write an expression when given a phrase? And that'll make more sense when we start talking about it. So how do I write an expression when given a phrase? Okay. So make sure you have all of this on your paper. This should take up your whole entire paper. And for those of you that are working on the escape room, which might not be all of you, but for some of you that are working on the escape room, you are going to need 2 numbers. And these numbers will be important because it's going to ask you for the sum of them. So I'm going to write these 2 numbers down. You don't actually have to write them on your paper, but you're going to need those 2 numbers to add together in order to go into the next part of the escape room. So make sure you have your notes ready so that when we begin, you're already set to go. So this is the beginning of our first learning target, which is writing expressions. So our entire unit is based on expressions, and today we're going to be talking about writing expressions. So let's go ahead and get into writing expressions, what that actually means. So the first thing that we need to know is what is an expression, and that is on your vocabulary for your vocabulary, virtual vocabulary wall on our website. But in short, when we talk about an expression, that is a problem with no equal sign. Okay, so it's a problem with no equal sign. And the reason why is because we're not looking for a particular answer. We're just looking to simplify it. And you'll see what that means in a few minutes. Okay, so before we get started, let's talk about a little bit of our vocabulary that we're going to need to know in order to be successful at writing expressions. And so we're going to be creating problems is really what we're doing. So when you see the word, that plus sign, you might see the word add or addition, all right? That's very, very common. Some other words that you might hear are sum, and I know you guys have seen this word before. You might see a term in all or more than. Those are very, very popular when you're looking at word problems. Like Kevin is 8 pounds more than Michael or what have you. Sometimes you'll see all together. That's very popular. You know, what is the cost of the items all together? You might see the word total. And a simple one that you've known since you were younger is plus. So together, all together kind of are the same thing. So those are words that you might see as you are working along in using these problems. So keep that in mind. I want you guys to be able to go to your virtual word wall and find these words there. Another one here on the right-hand side with that subtraction sign. So obviously the word subtract or subtraction. Okay, that's very popular when you see that. One that you'll see often is decrease. Where something is getting smaller, it's decreasing. Less than. That is one that you will see a lot in this particular unit, less than. Or sometimes we'll say fewer than. Fewer than, less than, the same thing. Or decreased by. Okay, so we can say decreased. So just kind of add a ed at the end and you can put decreased by. That's a popular one. Another one sometimes will be minus or fewer. I'm going to stay away from take away because that's not usually something we use in 6th grade pre-algebra.
So those are the words that you might see when we are looking to create a subtraction expression. So remember, our goal is just to create problems. We're creating problems based on sentences. So I'm going to give you a sentence and you're going to translate it to become a math problem. This dot right here is our multiplication. And I know you guys are used to using the X, but that is not something that you'll use in pre-algebra and algebra because we use variables also. So you'll see the multiplication sign a lot. You might see it this way. Okay. In algebra, so that little, it's called an asterisk. Let me do that again. Maybe it was a little too squished. So you might see something like that. You might see parentheses, so write that down. So you could see an asterisk, you could see parentheses. Sometimes people use an X, but it is very, very rare. Okay, so these are the ones you typically see are the first three. The multiplication with a dot. Or sometimes you might see something like this where a variable and a number are stuck together like 2y. That means multiplication. Okay, so a very popular word that we use a lot in algebra is product. So when somebody asks about the product of something, that means multiplication. Or the factor of something, that also is multiplication. One that you'll see a lot with ratios and in 7th and 8th grade is per. That's very, very popular. Something that you're going to learn this unit, and you might already know this, is to distribute or distribution property. That's very, very important to this particular unit. Or double, which means you, not doubly, double, which means you multiply by 2. Or triple, which means you multiply by 3. We could go on and on with those words. Those are things that you'll see often when you're talking about multiplication. And lastly, division. Division is something that a lot of times you won't see a division sign like this anymore in algebra. And I will show you what you'll typically see. And that is in algebra, you'll usually see a fraction bar. So maybe like 1 over 2. This means right here, this means division. Okay, that's important where you divide bottom into top, in and out. Very, very well-known word for dividing or division would be this word right here. You will see this a lot when we're talking about word problems. Quotient, okay? Or if they're asking about each, that's important. Or half when you're going to divide by 2, right? When you're cutting something in half. Another one is average, which you guys have seen that. We've done that a lot in our first unit, which is mean. You might find that also. So these are the most important words that you'll see. And as we go on, we might be adding to this as we see some problems. We will be adding depending on what the problem is asking for. Okay, and so what I want you guys to do next is I want you guys to go ahead and go down to the last section of your paper where it says writing expressions, and I'm going to show you what that looks like to write an expression. So when we have an expression, we might be given something like this. Go ahead and write this down. 5 more than 3. And what we need to do is we need to take this from a sentence or a phrase to an expression, okay? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it down here. And then I'm going to go ahead and erase this piece because we don't need it after all. Oops, don't want to do that. There we go. Just wanted to move it a little bit more. So we are going to go from a sentence or a phrase, right? I'll go ahead and put a phrase here or a sentence. And then we are going to go to an expression. So in this case, the first sentence that we're working with is 5 more than 3. 5 more than 3. So we see this right here. And we have to just go ahead and ask ourselves, well, what does more than mean? Does it mean add, subtract, multiply, or divide? We only have 4 options: add, subtract, multiply, or divide. And in this case, when we go ahead and look up into our vocabulary, we find more than in the addition section. So we know that more than typically means addition. So we're going to put a plus sign here. And then we have two numbers. We have our 5 and our 3. So we have 5 plus 3. And that is what you call an expression. It's just a problem with no equal sign. We will be working with equations with equal signs later, but not right now, okay? And then let me go ahead and just give you one more example, just in case you weren't in class. If we say something like the quotient of 10 and 5. The quotient of 10 and 5. So the first thing I do is I look for my key term, which is quotient, and then I look for my two numbers, 10 and 5. So if we look up at our vocabulary, quotient is here under division, so I know it's a division problem. So I can go ahead and write my division sign. And really, even though it's division, I'm going to show you this way, but I'm going to show you the way we usually do it. So it says 10 and 5. But typically in algebra, we would write it like this. This is the one you want to make sure that you know how to write down. Okay, with that being said, make sure that you have your notes completely done, and then you'll be practicing some.